company called EPlus. Does anybody know who EPlus is? Some people do. Okay, so we're a value-added reseller. And basically what we do is we sell a lot of products through our vendors to help really move pricing for you to get a better leverage deal. What we're doing is we're expanding our business a little bit and we're moving more into services. So my aspect of being with the company is to come in and help them expand their cybersecurity practice. So as the title states, I'm what's their principal security strategist. There's a couple of them in the industry. I'm also what's known as a CISO. CISOs are really there to help organizations figure out from a security programmatic perspective, what do they need to be doing. Not necessarily all the technology, but really generally the strategy and the approach and things of that nature. Is anybody in here a CISO? Are you guys any directors, any senior level management, middle management, staffing, technical people that are really dealing with the network, boxes, everything, right? All that kind of stuff. Okay. Well, just a little bit about me. I used to work for another small boutique in Baltimore called Hartman Executive Advisors, where we set up a cybersecurity firm there as well. And then prior to that, I was at PwC doing a lot of assurance work, helping with controls, and then I was at Accenture doing a lot of technology and systems integration work as well at IBM, developing what's called a critical infrastructure protection program. And then I was in industry, I was actually the CISO at Freddie Mac in the early 2000s when we were going through the dot-com era and getting everybody on the internet and things like that. So what I'm going to talk about today are some of the current challenges that we're all dealing with. The different levels of what we're going to talk about is probably going to be high for you guys initially, but it'll be eye-opening. You take this back to your leadership and sort of get them from a perspective of what they need to be doing. Some solutions, and then trends. The trends are kind of the theme throughout the entire project, or the presentation. So, does anybody want to guess why I put that 250 days? Okay. That's, what's that? Bingo. Man, I wish I had an award to give you, but that's the actual average time from InfoSec magazine that it takes before you're able to find somebody that's been in your environment from a breach perspective, okay? How about this one? What's that a result of? Okay. That's the amount of payouts and ransomware fees just this past year. What do you think this number is? Can you believe that? That's what's projected this year to be the payout. It's been over a 500% increase. 50% of the companies in the United States have been impacted by ransomware. So you see we got some serious challenges and some trends going on here. E-commerce halted, productivity dropping. Who was impacted Friday? Denial of service attacks, right? How many people went home? How many people weren't available to do their job? How many transactions weren't processed because sites like Netflix, Wall Street Journal, a number of different companies were impacted pretty significantly all afternoon. And it's not just something that's happened recently. I don't know if you guys know, excuse me, there's a gentleman by the name of Krebs, who's one of the senior security architects, that his site was attacked not too long ago, Brian Krebs. And also there was a French web hosting site that was also attacked. So there's this pattern, right, that's going on as it relates to these different things that are happening now. And we need to be prepared for it. So we got to stop it, right? What's our objective, everybody? We need to understand, stop the data breaches, stop the denial of services, and really more importantly, we need to tackle ransomware, right? And this is the most critical thing going on right now. I think you realize, ransomware is like a disaster. If it attacks your data, you can't get to your data, you can't run your businesses, right? And so the number one thing I always tell anybody when I'm talking to them in events like this is backup, right? Having a good, clean backup, if you can't do anything at all, is critical to your environment. You're going to hear a little bit about potential capabilities around the way you can do backups from another vendor that's going to talk in a second. Okay. So, believe it or not, this really is a public service issue. So you guys are out serving the communities. You've got to provide the capabilities to them. You've got to do it fast. You've got to do it quick. I mean, if you equate your ability to be publicly facing and helping your constituents to the same way a company is trying to protect their brand, right? Once these things happen to you and they realize you don't have the capabilities and consistency to keep things up, they're not going to want to provide. They're going to actually complain, right? The government's a little bit different because you can't necessarily not use these folks and you can't be there. But you do have obligations. You don't want somebody beating on you all the time, not thinking that you're doing the right things. So, this challenge is not going to go away, right? It's going to continue to increase. We've got this threat landscape. The ransomware thing is a good example where there was initially 2 or 3 families of ransomware capability 2 years ago, and it's grown to more than 20 families. And there's variants that are exploited off of those. So it's gotten so bad, and the threat landscape is going to be so pervasive, you can actually go on a SaaS and buy, ransomware.com and get any type of variant that you want. And you can go to your next door neighbor and start attacking them. You can buy this as a service now. You don't have to figure it out. It's all out there for you. You buy it, it's all commercialized. So it's just going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. The other thing is there's really an inconsistent management and support of security technology, right? There's so many things, so many endpoints, so pervasive, Internet of Things and all things that are coming. How do you manage all this stuff? How do you keep up with it all? How do you make sure that you're doing the right thing for all the kind of pieces, for all the different services that you need to provide? And then with cloud and mobility, the perimeter is stretched out to everyone now. They have everything you can potentially think about. It's not like it was in the old days. We had a data center, you had a couple firewalls, you had a couple endpoints, and you had your facilities that you had to reach. Now if you're starting to use these kind of capabilities to enable those services to your constituents, which they're demanding, you've got to be in a position of understanding how this is kind of exploding in your own face. And then obviously it's the data of all information that's out on those endpoints. What are we doing as it relates to how we store that information on servers and stuff that's on the cloud? So you guys really need to know this problem all too well. But with thousands of point solutions, right, how do you know what to do and what you need to do to solve it? Where do you begin to secure your valuable data? And so your customers, your constituents, your leadership, they are putting more demands on you to make sure that you're doing this well. Making sure that you're in a position where you understand how to report and take action if these things happen. There's a shortage of cybersecurity talent. A lot of folks don't have what they need. You can't find them. It's zero negative employment in the cybersecurity space right now. I'm sure you guys have experienced that, and if you're cybersecurity professionals, I'm sure you're happy about that to a certain degree as it relates to opportunities and positions that you're being offered. But the other thing too is there's there's so many federal, state, local compliance requirements, and that's only going to get worse, right? Because as these issues keep coming up and the consumer starts to complain about not being able to be protected, federal government, the governments are just going to put down more constraints so that people can't do so. There's congressional acts of law currently going through the process now to require that you have to have a security czar on your board of directors, to require that you have to have these different compliance capabilities based on what industries that you're in. So you guys have been there, you know it based on working local businesses, you see it all the time. And so with all that change and the acceleration of change, exponential change, it's really hard to forecast what you need to do and be in a position you can actually understand how to manage this on a regular basis. Because when it changes, you don't have the funding, things like that. You run off here, you do this, you do that, next thing you don't have what you need to get things done. It seems to crumble around you. So, you can't protect the things that you don't know. Obviously, you need to get the right knowledge, the right information, the right data together to understand where and how you're going to position your limited resources to address this problem. This is the reality, right? You're trying to do all these different things at once, with all different components and points of interface. Now, this is changing to a certain degree, and I'm going to talk about that. But the best practices have always been defense in depth. And I still believe defense in depth is the right strategy as it relates to the different things that you need to be doing across your enterprise as well as inside now. But there are some challenges, right? You've got to have experience with all these different security solutions, right? You've got to know which ones are the right ones to put in place. You've got to have a unified approach, as it relates to managing data, especially with key management. Multiple keys and confusion and everything all over the place. Encryption is very important as it relates to the techniques that you're moving forward with to manage that. This new world, you've got to have an understanding of the cloud, both the hybrid, enterprise, public, private. Those technologies, and when you leverage those technologies, you're going to make your jobs easier in the future. We'll talk a little bit about that. And you've got to have some understanding of compliance regulatory. So this is a picture, I just go to show you how complex this thing really is. And this is just now, basically what's the intel. These are all the layers. And so if you look at all these components and solutions and things that need to be done, what are we supposed to be doing, when you have limited resources? How do you focus on the things that are supposed to be put in place? And I can give you these slides later if you guys can't see this. But, generally speaking, you've got these assets, and you're trying to protect your assets. Right? And you've got all these endpoint layers, but you've got policy issues that you have to deal with. You've got continuous monitoring capabilities you need to work through. So, how does all this stuff operate well? How does your leadership know that you're doing this stuff? You put it in, are you monitoring it? Are you keeping it up to date? What reporting are you giving? How are you running around it? It's chaos. There's all kinds of things that you have to do to keep in order. So what I'm trying to present today is, to simplify this, you really need a holistic security methodology. And it needs to be structured around really three legs of the stool, right? First thing and foremost, there's got to be a strategy, right? And it's got to be based on risk management. It's got to be coordinated and aligned with the business and what they need and how they're going to facilitate those things that they're looking for. You then, once you have your strategy and your capabilities and what you think you need to do, you move into the architecture and design phase. And with that, you really kind of look at the solutions, how you're going to implement those solutions, what kind of capabilities you need, and where you're going to put them. The last phase that we believe, from my perspective at least, and it's really going to make a differential change, is how you leverage managed services in the future, right? The challenge has always been keeping up with all this stuff, your fingers in the dike. There are solution providers, right, that are out there today that you need to take and leverage them because they've done it, they've been doing it, they know how to do it well, and they can leverage the resources that they have versus having to build it up individually with every one of your organizations to try and manage it yourself. So those are the 3 points that I want to make. I want to go just real quickly. What is strategy and risk management? I have advisory services up there because you really don't want to do this on your own. Don't think of it as if you've got to start from the ground up and go forward. There are professional people, organizations that have done this, been there. You can leverage them for a lot less than it's going to take you to figure it out on your own. They'll give you the frameworks, they'll give you the organizational capabilities, they'll give you the policy, the standards, they'll give you all this stuff. You just need to work with them. You don't have to reinvent it on your own. And you want to be able to put it into, I say EPlus cybersecurity program management, but it's got to be a flow process as it relates to the way that you're going to manage this, right? So when you think about the things that you have to do on a regular basis for governance, right? The penetration tests, the vulnerability tests, the social, environmental, or the social engineering tests, the wireless tests. Those are all these tactical assessments that you have to do on a regular basis. So if you put that in a framework program and you leverage someone to do that for you, you can be out doing the things that are really adding value to your clients. Not necessarily the trenches, fighting the fires, fixing the issues, responding to events. Benefits, I think it's pretty clear as it relates to what I mentioned. Okay, so the architecture and design side of the house, this is really where the meat of the technology is for security, right? This is where we're looking at the networks, we're looking at the infrastructure, we're looking at the applications, and then we have to understand the data. What and how are we protecting the data and the aspects of who has access to it, who's using it, what information they're using, and then the analytics that come out of that data. There's a lot of significant information that you can leverage within your analytics that'll help you manage and leverage some of these other capabilities that you need to do to be more proactive versus reactive in your approach to it. And then there's the emergency security technologies as it relates to how do you leverage security, behavior analytics, and security, interoperability, and orchestration. And I want to talk a little bit about that as it relates to how these things all kind of fit together and mesh into a common ecosystem. Let me just focus on that. So here's what's going on, right? There's this rise of the security ecosystems, and the vendors are really starting to call these platforms. So if you think about the way that you bought technologies in the past, there was all these kind of point solutions. You bought this, you bought that, you bought that. A lot of the vendors are starting to realize that they need to incorporate IPS, IDS, malware, filtering in one common platform. And you're seeing a lot of that coming as it relates to trends. It also integrates threat intelligence. So this behavioral analytics, this data that I talked about, and the ability to really use it and use parties that are already providing that, like ISACs and the things that go on. They're building these into the solution so that the proactive, reactive capabilities that you need to respond sooner versus later are built into some of these solutions that we're selling and providing. I talked about business analytics and data analytics. There's this new concept of machine learning. So in the past, in security, a lot of what we did to respond to vulnerabilities and to malware was a signature-based process, right? When your McAfee's and your Vampires, they have to have a signature, so this is what it looks like. They can build it up, they send it out. Well, now these machines are able to learn off of variants and exploits themselves to start to develop patterns to say, well, that doesn't look right. I'm going to shut that down until Ron comes over and says, wait a minute, you look at it. So they attack these things without having to have signatures to know because they have smart learning capabilities within them. And it's all different layers of ISO stack. There's some of it's within the application, some of it's actually built within the chips that are coming out now. And they do what's called hunting technology, where they actually are going out and they're probing outside of your environment. Let me find these things that could come and hit us at some point in time and make sure that we can turn those off, or sandbox them, we've heard that, or honey pots, honey nets, they all kind of fit together in that ecosystem. This type of technology is called adaptive security, right? So it's continually evolving on its own without you having to necessarily be involved and get your fingers down there and figure it all out like we have always done in the past. So as it evolves and as the threat landscape, as the surface areas landscape, they expand, this is the kind of technology that you need to be looking at to facilitate or working with your vendors to put into your environments. And then obviously all this is going to be enabled through the cloud, right? You're going to be able to buy what you need. It's kind of like you're going to go to a shopping center, you know, or you're going to get online and e-commerce and say, I want that thing, I want that thing, I want that thing. And it's all going to be able to integrate into your systems and capabilities, but you got to have a common, what we call platform stacks. So here's some examples, right? As it relates to the platform on the end and some of the vendors and what they're doing. They're combining next-gen firewalls, URL scanning, content network, all within one capability. In the middle, the endpoint, it's not just, oh, I found something and stopped it. It's actually, hey, let's prevent it from coming in, and now let's remediate it. Let's actually take automated transactional actions to remove whatever that thing is that came into my environment that's not supposed to be there. And then in the cloud, the thing about the cloud that concerns everyone is the data. Who's got access to my data? Who's looking at my data? What data I put in there? It's not necessarily new, but it's an emerging, accelerating technology called CASB, which is Cloud Access Security Brokers. All these capabilities and technology now integrated together to give you a framework for how to address some of the common issues that you've had around protecting your information, around what platforms you need to deploy, and how do you leverage the cloud safely. The CASB services, what they do is they actually let you control who has access to what data in the cloud, where it is, who acted on it, what things they did to it, preventing people from having it, not supposed to have, really cool stuff. The vendors are also combining their platforms, right? HP's got a lot of really great stuff in RSI data platforms, but it's now able to integrate closely with Fortinet. So you're seeing this change in the security ecosystem where a lot of organizations have some things, but they have to be at a certain red level, but they can then also integrate with the other capabilities they have in the past. So it's making it easier for you. But it's not easy to do if you don't have the right skills, right? So you need the right people to do this sort of thing. So that gets me back into managed services. You know, I'm talking about, you guys do this all the time, most people might have done. It's device management, it's configuration change, it's all these different things. It's not just, you know, plugging in a box or changing out a hard drive. It's the whole service aspect of the things that you run in a day-to-day operation and the capability that you can leverage for better processes, the benefits, consistency, footprints understood. There's lots of really cool offerings as far as one of the hardest things to do. I don't know how many people have tried to implement a SIM. Okay. Who's implemented a SIM in here? Nobody's implemented a SIM? None of your local organizations have? Well, you really need it because it's a process for taking all the logs of all your events that are occurring, and correlating them, removing false positives, and really giving you a very speared way of attacking things that make sense, and not flying all over the place for any event that comes up. These managed service brokers, they do it all the time. I mean, managed security services companies, they do it all the time. They have the people, the skills, and technology, the experience. They're going to do it a lot faster, cheaper, less costly, and more value added than you can ever have to do it yourself. So what I'm trying to say here is, you know, if you did do it yourself, and I probably should have flipped this up first, it's really like trying to put the pieces of all this stuff together. User identity, logs, assets, vulnerability, correlating all that so you know where to go with the limited resources that you have to address something that either needs to be prevented or has already occurred. And it's really like trying to find a needle in a haystack, right, through all this stuff. And then finally, you've got to be effective and you've got to be quick, right? Because if you're not, based on my first slide, 250 days, that's 6,000 hours that somebody's in your environment doing something they shouldn't be doing, taking your client's data. I know you guys all have PII data in all your systems. It's very sensitive. You know, look at what happened at OPM. I'm not going to name any city, states, or anything else that are local municipalities, but it happens a lot. And, you know, being able to understand that you have the confidence of an organization that's been there, done that, and help you facilitate remediating that is key. So this is the value add, right, for you guys. How many people are stuck down in the day-to-day, 80% of their job, just sustaining and running the things that they have from a security perspective, right? If you can leverage these service providers, they can really help you move across the stack, right? You can be in the innovative side of this. So the point is, you know, we're trying to move our current state of security from the left to the right. And in the interim, you're working right with the business, providing the services that they want. And you leave all the low-hanging, I call it low-hanging fruit, but it's the stuff that requires a lot of effort and maintenance on a daily basis to the people that have the skills, capabilities, and are most effective at doing it. So the bottom line here, I mean, it's pretty simple if you're a business person, right? MSSPs are going to drive your costs down. It's inevitable. They're going to do it for you easier, faster, and cheaper. If you do it on yourself, on your own, as far as a SIM is concerned, you have to worry about upgrade, you have to worry about vendor changing, you have to worry about employees leaving, you have to worry about systems, new systems coming on. There's no process, it's just too hard. So, my final statement is, really look at this stuff seriously, the 3 big circles that I have, and if there's any questions, just hold them off to the end because there's 2 other presenters that want to actually come up that I'm going to turn it over to now, which the first person is Brian. Yep.
I'll stay over here. So my name is Ryan Post. I am a system engineer for Beam Software. Anybody familiar with Beam Software at all? All right, sounds good. So, first of all, for just a quick intro for anybody that hasn't heard of Beam, we are a backup software focusing in the virtualization space with hypervisors, VMware, Hyper-V. Right, that's our focus. Rapid recovery, be able to test backups, but also offering solutions for monitoring and reporting on those environments. So the reason I put Beam in security as a question is it really doesn't come into play that much when you start talking about backup problem. Right? So really as a backup problem, we have a little bit different perspective on things and some of the things that Ron has talked about out there. One of the focuses is ransomware, right? What happens with that? And the first thing is always being proactive. What can you do from the beginning to really help yourselves with that? The first thing is using anti-malware, right? And making sure that you are keeping it up to date, which is anybody guilty of not keeping that up to date? I know I am on my own stuff. So, important to make sure maybe users, have for a meeting, make sure users are proactive in doing that as well, not put it on, IT shoulders. Also keeping the device up to date. Who loves, Patch Tuesday from Microsoft, getting those updates, and I'll be guilty again here of, probably a couple thousand updates that need to happen on a computer. So anybody else, that way as well. So usually those patches that come out have important updates, that Microsoft or whatever the application may be, to keep it updated and secure. Right? So keep up on that. And then lastly is be careful and use common sense. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have a lot of workers that may be down on Facebook or other sites that really aren't necessarily work, and they may click on the wrong links, and that's really what kind of sends and affects their computer. I know my mom does it all the time at home, so I have to get the call of why isn't anything working? Why can't I get to any websites? And then I have to open everything up. So you don't have to download everything. That's something I think, especially to teach your users. So A, it doesn't affect their stuff, but it doesn't spread. Right? It doesn't cause anything bigger than it is. So what happens once there is an infection of ransomware? Right? First is call the police. Right? You maybe not even think that, but the reason that's important is there could be other organizations that may have the same issue arise at some point. Right? So this could be beneficial for that department, that police organization, to resolve the issues, fix it. Right? But also, the second thing is don't pay the ransom. Right? I mean, that's a lot of money, first of all. Depending on what it is, you may be quickly to pay that ransom as well. But the thing is that it's going to encourage these attackers to keep doing it. Pick another organization, pick another user to infect. So not everything might be recovered as well. I mean, you may pay that ransom, and they maybe give you half the data, and hey, you got another ransom on the other half. Right? That's more money. So to be 100% sure that you're actually going to get the data back, or potentially there's some other things to put in place, and it really leads into having a backup. Right? Having something that you could restore from prior to that time of being infected, or by the time it actually took place. That way you have data ready to go. You're not having to worry about that ransom having to pay that money. So using Beam against ransomware. Right? So one of the things I use in the personal life, with the example of my mother, clicking the wrong thing, is our Beam Endpoint Backup. This is a free tool that you are able to get on our website. So it installs on laptops, desktops. It could be potentially used in a server role. There are some things later this year to look out for in a Beam perspective as far as a Beam product. called the Beam Agents. We'll have some Beam Agent for Windows physical servers as well as Linux physical servers. Official day of that being released will be released soon. But it's free, right? So you can have as many copies as you like. On many users, if you are a Beam backup or replication customer, we can send the user workstations, their backups directly to that Beam backup repository you already have set up. So you have your virtual machine recovery as well as the endpoint recovery all in one place, all from the Beam backup or replication console. Having removable media. Get it off the network. Not have access to that once a backup has been sent. That way, if it's not connected, it can't be affected. So one of the things with the endpoint backup product is that you can target, say, a USB drive. I have it on my docking station on my desk. Every time I plug in my computer to the dock, it goes ahead and runs that backup, and now says a command and then disconnect that USB drive. So then I have a command to reconnect it at a certain time if it's still docked, right? So that's another thing, making sure that the computer is available to actually run that backup to the location that you choose. So Beam backup or replication. I mean, this is our bread and butter product here. Before that, so backup copy jobs. That gives backups to a different backup repository, say from a Windows server, maybe to an offsite location. Tape jobs, getting it off the tape, getting that early. That is going to be disconnected at some point. It's going to be sent probably somewhere to a safe to a couple hundred feet under a mountain, maybe to a storage unit that your organization owns that's climate controlled and safe. But redundancy is key, having multiple copies of those backups, so really they're not getting affected to be able to not restore from those types of scenarios. And a separate backup network as well. Within Beam, we have the ability to separate a backup network. So you have your production network that your servers are actually running on. Well, let's send the backups via a different network that only the Beam server has access to. So that limits other machines within that infrastructure from getting to that network and affecting backups. And we also have file level restores. Right? If an entire virtual machine isn't affected, it's maybe a certain directory that got affected. Well, let's go restore that entire directory, that entire virtual machine hard disk, whatever it may be. Right? It doesn't have to be that full VM recovered, taking longer time. And then lastly, as far as redundancy, we do have storage snapshot capabilities with HP. Right? With their three-part store server, the store virtual on the left-hand capabilities, where another redundancy there is store snapshots on that production storage does provide for a fast recovery. So that snapshot could be taken before things were infected for a particular VM. So with that being said, that's really all I had from a backup perspective to look at ransomware. I'll pass it over to Jason.
While Jason's working his way up there, we're going to have a little question and answer session at the end if we have time, so hopefully we will. And we started a little late, so please stick around until. Can we do that thing?
Sure. All right, my name is Jason Leon. I am with Aruba, Hewlett-Packard wireless and networking company. How many people here have a wireless network at work? Should be everybody, right? How secure is it? Do we know? There's three types of wireless networks I see. 802.1x, which everybody on the IT staff had to touch a device at one point. Those with credentials on it, allow it to connect to the network. That's the only thing that connects. And maybe you have a guest. Everybody gets on that. The other one is a pre-shared key. That pre-shared key gets out. Jason comes into work with his laptop, his phone, his iPad, that laptop the kids play games with at home, download movies, might not have antivirus, might not have spyware, might not have a Windows firewall turned on. So we really don't know how secure our wireless is unless we can see what's on the network. Let's see the devices. Let's see what Jason brought in and apply some policies to it. Tell Jason he can bring in his work laptop and he can get anywhere on the network that my employees need to. See that Jason logged in with those same credentials on his phone and say, yeah, let's give you a couple apps, but you don't need to be on the entire network. See that Jason brought in that laptop that the kids play on and say, wait a minute, you don't have antivirus on, you don't have any spyware, let's quarantine you, and let's do some remediation until we let you on the network. So we have a product that kind of takes care of that for us. Number one thing we talk to you about to IT people is, how do I make my wireless secure, but I don't kill my IT staff? They don't want to have to onboard every guest. They don't want to have to onboard every device. Mobile devices. I want to let my people bring their phones. There's some applications they need, but I don't want to have my IT staff touching every one of those devices. So how do we do that? How do we make wireless easy, but yet keep it secure? How many people have seen this? I've got an SSID for everything I need my wireless. A contractor SSID, an employee SSID, an HR SSID. I went to a hospital, they have 13 SSIDs going on at the same time. So not only is that a lot on the IT staff, but what about the air? All these are being advertised, all these beacons are in the air at the same time, taking up time that someone could actually use the wireless. What if you just have a guest and one secure SSID? So we apply policies once they connect that secure SSID. It says, hey, this is a work laptop, they're going to get this access. This is a phone, they're going to get this kind of access. This person is just a guest or a contractor, we're going to give them this kind of access. But when we advertise the 2 SSIDs, less management, less overhead, less stuff in the air. BYOD. A lot of people won't even do BYOD just because of the hassle. So it turns the Wild Wild West. The SSID gets broadcast, somebody got the pre-shared key, handed it out to everybody else, everybody's on the network. Every device they want to bring in. How do we do stuff about that? Mobile devices, guest registration. Instead of just having a pre-shared key, what if we had a guest register themselves? We take some advice, some information from them. Maybe use that information in retail to send them a coupon or follow up with them later. And the IT staff doesn't have to touch it at all. They don't have to talk to the person. They don't have to get a ticket. The person registers. They get a text or an email, get a key that's only for them and only for their device. And now we can set policies for them. We can track them. We can see what devices they bought in our network. And we can keep up with them. And then we remember the MAC address so that when they come in 2 days later, they don't have to go through that process again. They've already registered. However long we want to keep it, 6 months, a year. Makes it easier on the user as well. They don't go to lunch, come back, and have to go through that captive portal again, fill in all that information. Here's that laptop that came home from where the kids were downloading music, playing games. Let's stop them as soon as they hit the network and say, hey, your firewall's not turned on. You don't have antivirus. Let's put you in a mediation VLAN. We can work with third parties and send a ticket to IT Helpdesk and say, hey, you got somebody here, they put a laptop on, it doesn't have antivirus. You need to help them out before they get on the network. Because once they're on, 250 days, then they are. So ClearPass is that product. ClearPass is a virtual device, or we have actual devices for people who don't want to do the virtual machine. They come in 500, 5,000, 25,000 device licenses. It's per device. To cluster those or make those an HA product, you just add another device or another VM with that amount of licenses that you need. They automatically join the cluster and they share all those licenses. Really easy to branch out or cluster more devices if we need. And this is what's inside. So again, radius, TACACS, reporting, access tracking, per session logs. What did the person do? Where did they go? What device were they on? All the way down to like, is it a Windows phone? We can track all that. We can make policies for that. Hey, allow Windows phones on this part of the network, but not others. I don't allow them to do updates on my network. We also have tie-ins to other third parties. Say I authenticate a wireless user and I send that person's information to the firewall. And maybe in the firewall, the Juniper or the Palo Alto, the Fortinet, they have firewall policies for that user that came from a certain group or that user himself. Jason likes to watch March Madness in March. So when Jason signs in a wireless, let's have a policy you can't watch March Madness. Seen it. Also down here, so if you've got these Helpdesk third-party services, that's where if you had a person who needs some type of remediation, a service ticket gets sent to them, letting you know, hey, we got this person that's trying to get on your network that needs antivirus. Other great thing about this, it works on any network. It doesn't have to be HP, it can be Cisco, one can be Cisco, HP, Juniper, any type of firewall. It really doesn't matter what vendor it is, it works on any network. Another one of the third-party things we tie into is multi-factor authentication. So this one's Duo. So you already have your phone registered with Duo. You go to sign into the wireless. We give you some kind of pre-shared key or username and password. You then get redirected to Duo, who sends you your credentials to your phone that you already registered with them. So a little dual-factor authentication from a third party. And this shows that how we can cluster those or spread them out throughout your network. You can have a publisher, which is like the master one, and then a bunch of subscribers, either at your main data center, you've got regional offices, you've got a branch office. They can scale all the way out. The same type of here, this is a distributed size here, so here's my main data center. I got a small office, another little small office. We can have all these along with VPN users. So if you have people coming on the SSL VPN, you authenticate with the same tool and have policies for what they can get to. And that's all I got. Any questions?
You do that on wired devices as well as wireless?
Wired and wireless. And again, any vendor, Cisco wired, HP wired, Juniper wired.
So any general questions overall, since we haven't had a chance to prep us and sort of address anything you're thinking about? Got another minute? Before it's on. Because you got it on time for your next one.
For passive user certificates.
Yes,
What kind of CA? Is it
it
internal
is a
or
CA.
external?
It's internal.
So it lives in my house, not.
Right.
Yeah.
All your mobile devices have a certificate. It's like 3 clicks and your device will have a certificate.
And it'll, the trust is okay with them.
No questions? No other questions about anything we talked about? Okay.
So I was going to say one more thing. So my name is Nathan Burrows. A lot of you guys know Justin Smith. We're out at the booth. I think the biggest thing that you're going to hear from Ron for any of these security vendors in general, being proactive, right? I mean, everybody's nodding. Yeah. I'm not to the point where you want to be. Being proactive is the first step. So how does EPlus fit in that? Let us help you be proactive. So if it's just coming up, talking to Ron, say, hey, well, what about this or what about that? There's areas where we feel that we can really help out. But then there's other areas we feel that there's another party out there that can do better than that. So I think that you'll see from working with us, we're not going to say one size fits all. And you're going to find that over and over. Obviously, we feel as though that HP and Veeam and some of the other products that we've talked about have some really good fits. But it's really about understanding your organization and what you're dealing with on a day-to-day basis. And part of that is having that conversation. So that being said, I know you guys are dying to get to that next breakout session, but stop by the booth. Say hello, stop by the booth, catch us after this. I mean, we're sales guys, so we have to be outgoing and interact, but we want to see if we can help you guys, right? Some of the conversations may make sense, some of this may be like way over your head, but like Ron said, this is, let somebody that has been doing it with other organizations, let us help you. And we can give you a list. We can't display it all, but we have a lot of customers we work with on a day in and day out basis that I think you'd be surprised to hear, and obviously we can talk about those. So that being said, any other questions?
We're going to get the decks.
Yes, so the slide decks?
Contact information is on there if you want to
Yeah.
reach reach out.
So I don't know, if you personally want to make sure you get the deck, because I know a lot of these, yeah, we'll get the deck. Come to me, give me your business card, I'll make sure you get it personally. I don't know how they're sharing it beyond that. So, this is my first nickel G's to go around, so some of you guys may know better than me. But that being said, thank you guys so much.